Welcome to your Daily 5 for Thursday, March 28th, 2024. I did not plan this review to fall on the last day of Women's History Month. Well, not the last day, but the last 5 of Women's History Month. But that's just how it worked out. Sometimes the universe just has a synchronicity of its own. But I want to talk today about a film from 1982 titled A Question of Silence. It's a movie from a director named Marlene Gorris, who I'd never heard of. I'd never heard of the film itself. The only reason I knew about it was I get notifications from the Criterion channel streaming service about movies that they add into their different collections and circulations. And I read the synopsis for this film, and I found it interesting. And so I decided to go ahead and watch it because it's only maybe an hour and 32 minutes. Not very long, not particularly long for movies like this. And a Dutch film, so subtitled, I'll warn you now. But I thought, oh, let me watch this. This sounds interesting because the premise, and this is not a spoiler because this is in the premise. It's the very opening of the film. This is not a secret. Is that a psychiatrist is brought in by a Dutch court to evaluate 3 women who had never met before the day that they all murdered a man that they had never met before. So essentially, these 3 women all conspired to murder a man that they didn't know, and they didn't know each other. And so the Dutch legal system, and I don't know if all the terms are one-to-one with the United States, it seems vaguely similar to, if not almost exactly modeled on the idea of evaluating somebody for the sanity to stand trial. So the psychiatrist is brought in to evaluate these women and say whether they are sane or not, whether they can stand trial as in their right mind or if they are in fact insane. And the movie then proceeds to show us different aspects of these women's lives and what they were doing before the murder, what their lives were like. So you get one picture of things, and that picture then gets slowly expanded as the movie proceeds. And the movie really, I think, this is my perception of it, and perception is such a vital thing in this movie. Perception is everything in this movie. Because you see all these different facets of these women's lives. You don't necessarily get explanations or details on all of them, but you have to bring to some degree what you interpret them to be and what those interpretations mean as far as whether these women were, I don't know if there's a better word for it, but justified in the actions that they took. And that's a big point of it is, in the movie itself, characters ask these questions over and over on whether this is something that is a condonable action, whether there is any understanding to it, or if in fact it is the actions of 3 women who simultaneously all lost their collective minds. And that's what the movie challenges you to decide and to think and to read into. And it stuck with me. This movie I watched, I wasn't sure if I was really going to like it, but I figured 90 minutes or so, it's not a big deal. So I watched it and it stuck with me. I was thinking about it for a couple of days, to the extent where I woke up one morning, I think it was 2 days after I'd watched it, I woke up and the first thought in my mind was an answer to something that I hadn't put together in the film. Because the movie intentionally does leave some things ambiguous or presented in a way where you have to try to figure out what it means. Now, it's not incomprehensible. This is not a movie that gives you no answers. It definitely presents certain things, and I think what it wants you to do as the viewer is interpret what those things mean and whether you agree with what the characters were probably thinking and what the movie is saying about it. So I think that's what I mean about it. It doesn't give you all the answers, but it's not, again, it's not something where you have no answers. You don't not know anything. There are firm things that are presented. There are scenes we see. We hear characters say things that do define some of it, but the larger context is really up to the viewer to decide. So I woke up and this one element, one of these elements that I couldn't really put together, it snapped right into place. And as soon as I woke up, I thought of it. I went, okay, got it. That answers that. I'll talk about it tomorrow in the Friday show when I get into the details. But movies don't often do that for me. Movies stick with me, but I don't often wake up and think of a solution to something that had been puzzling me. And that's not to say I have all the answers. And it's not to say that my answers will in any way match anybody else watching it. One of the things I think is so powerful about a film like this is it makes you confront the idea of your own perception, what you're seeing and what you're interpreting. Things that may not make sense to me might make perfect sense to someone else from a different life experience. Which is not to say that the movie is constantly shifting, and it's not to say that I think there are grounded ideas. I do think that there was intent in a lot of these scenes, and there is a point of view present, but it is not one that cannot be molded by the person watching the film. And I love movies when they do that. So again, it's from 1982. It's titled A Question of Silence. You can watch it for free on Tubi. Also streaming on the Criterion channel if you have that service. But in any way that you can watch it, I would say this one is worth watching. Later.